Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. My wife and I worked our butts off for years to be able to afford a nice little vacation home by the beach. It was our pride and joy, a place where we could relax, unwind, and make lasting family memories. The quaint cedar wood cabin sat nestled amongst swaying palm trees, just steps away from sugar-soft sand and gently lapping waves. For us, it was paradise. We rented out the beach house on VRBO and Airbnb when we weren't using it ourselves. The extra income helped cover taxes, maintenance, and upgrades. Overall, we had fantastic guests who respected our vacation home as if it were their own. That is, until Karen came along. It started off normally enough. Karen booked the beach cabin for a week-long stay. Her initial messages were pleasant, and she seemed excited for her upcoming seaside getaway. But things took a turn on the day she was set to check in. I received a series of angry texts accusing me of trying to scam her. According to Karen, she had arrived at the address only to find the home occupied with squatters claiming to be the owners. That's right. Karen was accusing my house sitter and his family, who I had hired to watch the property in my absence, of being criminals. My panic turned to utter shock as I scrolled through the messages. Not only had Karen berated my innocent house sitter who was simply doing his job, but she had somehow gained access to the home and moved her belongings in. I immediately called the cop to report an unlawful occupancy, but Karen was slippery. She managed to convince the cops that it was actually her who had been wronged. Karen presented an obviously bogus deed with her name on it and claimed that my house sitter was the one trespassing. By the time I was able to provide documentation proving home ownership, significant damage had been done. Karen and her family acted as if they owned the place. Not only did they help themselves to using every inch of the property, they demonstrated absolutely zero respect for my possessions. These were people with no common courtesy. They trashed the place, stained upholstery, marked up walls, clogged plumbing with God knows what. But the final straw came when I pulled up the security camera footage. There was Karen, hacking away at my palm trees that had been on the property for decades, claiming they were a safety hazard. All because she didn't want bits of palm frond getting in her precious pool. The same pool, by the way, where her bratty kids were tossing broken pool furniture because no one had bothered to stop them. Armed with evidence, we finally got Karen and her nightmarish family ejected from the premises. She had the audacity to threaten a lawsuit for unlawful eviction and emotional damages. Yeah, no way was I letting that happen on my watch. It was time to fight back. My lawyer roared into action with an epic counterclaim. I sued Karen for property damages, unlawful occupation, defamation, loss of earnings due to her actions, and triple the amount her week-long stay would have cost as penalty fees. The look on Karen's face when she realized I was the one suing her was absolutely priceless. It wiped the entitled sneer right off her face. She tried every trick in the book to weasel her way out. First, Karen claimed she was an innocent victim who had been sold the property by a scammer. When that didn't work, she fired her lawyer and decided to represent herself. Her lame cross-examinations were almost comical. In the end, Karen got absolutely decimated in court. The judge saw right through her lies and manipulations. Not only did she have to pay every penny I demanded, but she also got slapped with a hefty fine on top. Karen learned the hard way that you don't mess with people's vacation homes. Justice was served, but the whole ordeal still left me with a sour taste. This was supposed to be our family haven, not a crime scene after Hurricane Karen rampaged through. My wife and I seriously considered selling the once beloved beach house. But ultimately, we decided to reclaim it as our own again. We took the opportunity to remodel and put our own stamp on the place. The end result was even better than before. Now when we stay there, we are reminded of the fact that we didn't let Karen ruin what was important to us. Our vacation home remains a source of joy, where new memories continue being made. It just goes to show that sometimes you have to fight for the things that really matter. The next one is a pro-revenge story. During the final trimester of my last year in high school, we had to do a group project that needed to be finished by the end of the trimester and was evaluated and graded in front of a jury of teachers instead of an exam. I was paired with the biggest douchebag in class. Imagine a really entitled, arrogant a-hole. Every time we were supposed to work on the project, he would have some excuse to not show up and demand I would work on it alone to make sure the project stayed on track. In the beginning, I tried to complain and talk to the teacher, but she would just say, "Make it work, it's your project." After a while, I stopped planning work meetings altogether. He would call me to ask how the project was going, and I would say something like, "Yeah, it's going well. I think it's almost finished, or I'll send you the presentation to prepare for the jury." Little did he know I had a trump card in my hand. The project counted for 40% of the final grade. Me, doing well in the class, already got about 55 of the other 60%, so even if I got a 0 on the project, I would still pass the class. The a-hole had a lot less. After it became clear he was just going to use my work to pass the class, and the teacher didn't care. I decided to throw out all work for the project and keep the a-hole in the dark. That last bit went a lot easier than I expected, as he was happy with me telling him that everything was on track. In the last week before the jury presentation, things became harder. The a-hole wanted me to send the presentation, so he knew which part he had to present. I managed to stall a few days with excuses, but 2 days before the jury presentation, I finally sent him an email with the PowerPoint, which was actually an MP3 file with a changed file extension. The next day I switched to my phone. In the evening I called him back with the excuse my phone had issues and he was panicking that there was something wrong with the PowerPoint. I told him not to worry. I will check it out tonight and have a working PowerPoint for tomorrow. I would come to the school at 8 a.m., so he could practice his part of the presentation before the jury appointment at 9 a.m. The next morning I arrived at school a little before 9 a.m., having switched off my phone again. When he saw me, he approached me with a mix of panic and anger. But before I could explain anything, we were called into the room with the jury for our presentation. I just told the a-hole to not worry and let me do the talking. We greeted the jury, and I started the introduction. The original idea of today was for us to present our project XYZ. But since I already have enough points to pass the class and Mr. A-hole over here couldn't be bothered to put in any effort, I decided to skip it and instead have a nice day off today. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for your attention. I just walked out on 4 confused teachers, and one a-hole with a mouth open so wide, it looked like he was trying to eat a club sandwich vertically. Naturally, there was some backlash in the days after that. Teacher called for an explanation, but in the end recognized I was a good student, and I indeed already passed the class without the project. A-hole was angry that he had to study over the summer for a re-exam. All in all, I was happy to have graduated and looked forward to going to college the next year. After the summer, I heard from friends that A-hole failed his re-exam, and that, combined with other bad grades, caused him to have to redo his last year. Karma is a idiot. The next one is a petty revenge story. I moved into a 4-bedroom house with 3 of my friends. I was the only woman among 3 dudes. One of the roommates was the owner's son. We were all friends in college. We all had different work schedules, and because I worked the earliest, 6 a.m., I had the only downstairs bedroom. My friend, let's call him Jay, who worked night shift and got home at 4:30 a.m., had the room above me so that we didn't wake each other coming home. During the week, Jay and I would eat breakfast together before he went to bed and I went to work. We had a jar in the kitchen we all would throw spare cash in, like $5, $10 at a time each. That was for common groceries like milk, eggs, basic bread, and occasional house meals and beer, because we were in our early to mid-20s. The rule was always that if you used the last of the common use stuff, you'd take from the jar to cover the cost and grab it from the store ASAP. When we grabbed pizza, or I'd make a meal for everyone, we used the same fund. This all is very important. About 5 months into the living situation, Jay met Karen and started dating her. He brought her to one of our game nights to introduce her to us to get a feel for how she'd mesh with us, and all was fine when she thought I was only the girlfriend of another roommate. Because we were playing in the dining room right by my room, Karen saw me go in that room to grab a sweater early in the night. Then she saw my roommate, the one she assumed I was dating, go upstairs to grab his phone charger. The entire vibe changed, and she started to ask me who I was dating. She was floored when my roommates confirmed I lived there. I had my own room, and I wasn't dating any of them. She saved face, said she was just surprised I'd want to live with 3 men, and we moved on. Cam, the owner's son, and I were the only ones that realized Karen saw this as a problem. After that, she started coming over right after I got off work and only leaving when Jay went to work. If I came out of my room to the living room, she'd ask why I was out there. If I was going to the kitchen, she would remark that I was being disrespectful to her and Jay and interrupting their time together. If I was talking to Jay when she got there, she'd practically grind on him and shove her tongue down his throat. She even complained that I was ruining the mood for doing my laundry. Jay had made it clear that he knew she was being a problem and had started pushing for them to just chill in his room. Unfortunately, she used the opportunity to make some of the worst porn imitation noises any of us other roommates had ever heard. We laughed it off and just left those 2 alone. After a couple of weeks, she had gotten drunk before Jay went to work, and we insisted she stay in his room and sleep it off. I literally brought her food and Tylenol because girl was going to feel like hell in the morning. The next morning, Jay came home and started making breakfast for me and him when Karen came down and just started screaming. She woke the other two roommates up. She accused Jay of cheating, accused me of having relations with all the guys, then made the dumbest statement possible. She demanded I pay Jay back for the food he was wasting on me. Cam literally grabbed a $5 from the jar and slapped it in Jay's hand. Cam and I had a come-to-Jesus talk with Jay. We both told him if she couldn't deal with me living there, then she could no longer come over. Jay asked for a week to figure things out, trying to claim she was just caught by surprise when she saw him making me breakfast and not thinking clearly. We gave him a week. In that week, mysteriously, the grocery jar was getting raided. We all noticed and talked about it. We noticed my clean dishes were appearing, still clean, in the sink. Little things were disappearing from common rooms and weirdly appearing in my room. Karen was being sweet. She was not exactly covert. Cam and I knew she was sowing chaos, but being curious where this was headed, we just watched. After a week, Cam gets a call from his mom asking if I had been going through something lately. Apparently, a concerned party had sent her picture after picture and story upon story about how I was trashing the house and stealing. Karen expected this to get me in trouble. Lucky for me, my landlord was actually worried I was not doing okay and wanted Cam to help me get through it. Cam told me and I started planning my petty revenge. First thing I did was eliminate the grocery jar. I split up what was in it evenly between the four of us and told them that because of the raided stash, I felt it needed to go away. Karen didn't like this, but when asked why, she claimed it was rude for me to make a unilateral decision. Cam backed me, battle won. Then I started hanging with Cam in the living room every day. She complained, but Jay told her it's our house and we can do as we please. When she would go to the kitchen, one have always asked what she was doing in our fridge. She stopped going in our fridge after 2 days. The weekend was here and we knew Jay had an extra overnight shift and Karen was planning to stay in his room so they could hang out the next day. Cue my biggest petty move ever. Just a little information. Cam and I met in college where we both studied theater, specifically acting. That Friday we hung out in his room, right next to Karen's. We made a bit of a show when Jay left and acted like he could not know that Cam and I were hanging out alone in his room. This caught Karen's attention. We started shaking the bed. Two nerdy people hip-thrusting the end of the bed to give the illusion the spicy thing was going down is quite awkward, but oh so entertaining. Within minutes, we got a text from Jay asking what we were doing. Cam replied playing video games. After 10 minutes, we stopped the bed shaking and actually did play video games, on mute. When Jay demanded a FaceTime session, he saw exactly what he needed to see. Me beating Cam in Mario Party. We cycled through this for a few hours. After a while, we decided to put the finishing touches on. We made a big deal about me needing to go to my room before Jay got home, and Karen took the bait. We could see the little bit of light being cut off in the slightly open door by her watching. Cam and I stage kissed and I headed to the living room. Jay came in 10 minutes later to find me watching a movie and asked what was up. I told him I'd been up playing video games all night with Cam. He tells me Karen claimed we were doing the nasty, and I told him we didn't. He goes to bed. The next day, Jay calls a house meeting without Karen. He tells us she's making claims of us having a relationship and hiding it from him. We say she's full of it. We tell him about the frame job she tried to pull, how she went to Cam's mom to get me in trouble. Jay asks our other roommate if he heard anything from the bedroom. Bro doesn't even flinch and says I heard me calling Cam her idiot and the usual Mario Party crap talk. They weren't banging. Jay asked about the grocery jar. We all told him we suspected Karen. The next day he broke up with her for trying to turn him against us. He called her a liar and a thief. A few months later, he dated another girl. She was awesome, and they're married now. I was a bridesmaid. But the absolute best part. Karen being one of the waitstaff and seeing Cam with his wife and me with my fiancé, telling them the story of how we once dry humped a mattress fully clothed to get back at a thief. Yes, Jay knows the whole story, and he didn't mind at all. To address the reason Jay wanted to know if we were actually getting funky, he is the kind of dude that hates useless secrets. If Cam and I were hooking up, he'd be fine with it. If we were hooking up and actively hiding it from him like we couldn't trust him, he'd have an issue. That was why we played hard into the Jay can't know part. Though Cam says Jay secretly wanted us, Cam and I, to get together, but nah. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work for one of North America's largest aftermarket auto parts stores, one that begins with an N and has a blue and yellow logo. At this job, for a few times a year, we have what's called a bucket sale. This bucket sale acts as a marketing gimmick, and is meant to entice people to buy more than what they need. If you have 3 or more items, you can fit them into a 5-gallon company branded bucket, and the price of your entire order is reduced by 20%. In all honesty, it's a pretty good deal for what it is. The only caveat is that you're required to purchase the bucket for $2.99. Most customers that I mention this sale to are usually surprised and impressed by the generosity, especially since I don't follow the at least 3 items must fit in the bucket rule, as I prioritize getting a customer out of the door with a smile on their face. $200 battery? How about we make that $160? $50 headlight bulbs? Nah, screw that. Take them home for $35 and get a free bucket out of it. The reason that I say that most customers enjoy this is because there's a handful of customers who would either not deal with having to carry a large bucket with them or simply don't understand the proposition that I'm trying to offer. Fair enough, maybe they've had a tough day and don't want to be bothered with paying less for more. It's no skin off of my back. Usually this isn't a problem, except for today. Not for a certain customer that I'll refer to as Karen. Karen walks into the store, is friendly throughout the entire exchange, and knows exactly what they want. This is always a pleasant experience, as I hate customers who dawdle around and only accept service on their own terms. As she's ready to make her purchase, the following exchange occurs. Me. Okay, so right now we're looking at a total of $98. However, if I sell you a bucket, your order drops down to $56.89. Karen. What do you mean? Why is it cheaper? Me. I have a store-wide sale that's in effect if you buy a bucket. Karen. But I don't want a bucket, I want this stuff. Me. That's fine, you don't have to take one with you. Karen. But why would you still charge me for a bucket if I don't want it? Me. It's policy. I can't complete this ticket under the sale price without incorporating the bucket. Karen. So why am I paying almost $70 when you just said the total was $56? Me. Because I can't. Either way, I imagine you still want to buy this stuff. Karen. Not if you're going to try to rip me off by selling me an unnecessary bucket. Can I speak to your manager? So, I get my manager and tell him what's going on before he talks with her. Manager has no patience for this kind of attitude. Manager. Hi there. Ready to go. Karen. Yes, but I don't want to buy a bucket. Manager. Okay, that'll be $98. Karen has heard herself in confusion. Karen. But I want the sale price. Manager. You don't want the bucket, which means you don't get the sale price. Karen looks at the bucket pile. In frustration, she puts down a $100 bill. Manager, while dispersing her change. It's a good thing you didn't want the bucket. There wouldn't have been enough money to give you your change back. A dejected Karen then leaves the premises. Oh well, we tried to help her. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.